I guess good. How about you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. It's I don't know about you, but it's starting to feel a little bit more like football weather. It's I'm gonna say it's probably 66, 67 degrees here in Hillsborough.
So that's interesting you said that because not 15 minutes ago, I was thinking there's a feel about October that lets you know it's October, first of all,
Right.
and a smell about October. And it honestly is the time that it really feels like football, too. So I was seriously was thinking that 15 minutes ago when I was upstairs.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
I've been noticing that the last, I noticed it Friday night when I went out, and you just get that feel that can kind of say, man, it's October. And I don't know, there's certain things, Jim, that I don't know why I get certain memories triggered. But when this happens, um, the first thing I think about is a Richmond Independence game at Independence. I think it was 2000 and when was that? 2006, 2005, 2007 was one of those years. Because 2003 and 4 were played at Memorial. And I don't know why, but that game, because it was near, and it was a little bit later than this, but it just I can remember that night real well, and it gets triggered by uh, this season, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
So, what?
It just it makes you, I don't know, just something about it. It gives you a little bit more energy. It's not the dog days of summer anymore. It's also not where it's freezing cold, and it's
Right?
windy and it's a little bit wet and damp, just enough to make you feel miserable.
Yeah, you can
And
still have hot days into September. I remember when my son played. Um, we had hot days his senior year. My oldest son, not my youngest son. Uh, we had hot days through the first few weeks of, and when I say hot, I mean in the 90s at kickoff. 90, 95 degrees in the day in September. So yeah, we don't get that kind of stuff in October around here. You're right; it's just like a switch gets turned on.
right. So,
Uh,
just out of curiosity, you having any games being played playing tomorrow night?
I haven't checked. I honestly haven't looked to see if we got any kind of weather moving up the coast. There's a possibility. There always is this time of year.
Right.
We're in usually the hurricanes that impact us happen in September, October.
Right.
Uh, it seems to be the worst, even though it's the ending part of the hurricane season. It seems to always be the worst.
I was just checking Max Preps, and there's looks like one, two, three, four, five, six, seven games that are in the association being played Thursday night.
In the east,
It's in the west of all
in the
places.
west. Oh, okay.
Ashbrook and South Point, North Gaston, Huss, Forest View and Crest, Stuart Kramer and Kings Mountain.
Gaston
Uh,
County.
then you actually have Gwen at Mount Tabor. That could be an interesting game.
Hmm.
Martin County at Tarboro. That's a blowout. Bertie and Perquimans. That could be a pretty good game too. But Perquimans is
So,
the northeastern part of the state.
so that the first ones you listed were all Gaston County games.
Yeah, Gaston, Cleveland County area.
Yeah, I wonder what's going on there. Is there a holiday this weekend that I'm not aware of?
Friday the 13th.
Well, it's Friday the 13th, which means nothing to me. Just like
Yeah, same here. It's like,
just
ooh.
just like my good friend Sam Griner hates the number 6. He will not let none of his players wear a number that has 6 in it.
How many points did West Charlotte score this last week?
7.
7. Okay, good thing that kicker made the extra point.
Yeah, it was not for West Charlotte was a tough game. Uh, I don't think it really harms them in 3A because Huff is really good. Huff played better in this game than they did in the Chambers game. Huff is Huff's the real deal. They can keep it together. They might actually make a run in the playoffs finally. You know, so many years we think at this point in the season or a little bit later that they have the tools, but of course the West is so hard to get through anyway. But that's a pretty good team, and in fact, I guess while I'm talking about it, Jim, I want to show you something here. I want you to look at this kid. So pay close attention. He's highlighted, marked in the center where he's at. There's a pancake. This is a big time pancake here. This is taking the pancakes to your grandma's and pancaking. So this kid, I don't know if I need to play all of it. I might skip ahead to his. He had 7 pancakes against West Charlotte. He played for Ashbrook, and then he, and I don't know if he played for what I don't know, and I need to ask him. His name's Keandre Marsh. I need to ask him if he played. I guess they're playing Myers Park there. If he played at Ashbrook this year, he didn't appear on the roster, the Huff roster on Max Preps when I was looking for him after the game Friday night. But in watching this game, you know how sometimes you're watching and just something triggers you to say, I need to watch more of this and stop paying attention to the other stuff. Well, that's what happened Friday night with this kid. Let's see if his West Charlotte stuff's in here.
Yeah. How big is the kid?
He says 6'3", 300 pounds. The first thing I asked him, now here's the West Charlotte game, because West Charlotte did a great thing and wore pink. They wore pink pants, and they had pink numbers. So let's get past this to the West Charlotte. Here's the West Charlotte game. So I saw this first, and I don't know how I saw that, but I saw that, but didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. And, you know, I'm watching this and I'm like, wow. He kept catching my eye, and then probably not this one, but it's that they don't have it. But I don't know why he didn't put them in there. Let me get back to this. So Jim, as I'm watching him, I started watching him. I got to watch this kid because I was seeing pancake after pancake, and I was standing kind of in the coach's box, and one of the coaches was standing next to me. And I was not talking to him. I just said out loud, I said, man, look at that. And that's all I had to say. And he said, I know. That's our best lineman, too. So he had just pancaked again. So anyway, I nominated him for Talking Pratt's Fresh Faces. The kid was just a beast out on the field. Jeff, I'm talking about a kid that came from Ashbrook and he's playing over at Huff now. Keandre Marsh. He's a center. Really impressive. I kind of watch centers because my oldest son, David, plays center. And I basically coached him to be a center. He didn't have an O-line coach. We had a couple of guys who tried to be coaches, but they didn't know. So I actually, a number of times, took the whole offensive line. You know, they forget what they called themselves, some kind of eating club, and they came up with signals that they would call on the line. So, you know, the center usually calls out the blocking, and they had come up with schemes based on food because, you know, they're all big boys. David at 6'1", 225 was the smallest guy out of the bunch on the offensive line. But I spent a lot of time with all those kids trying to teach them some basic techniques. And honestly, I use physics, and I explain physics to them and talk to them about how physics can be their friend, both in being a downhill blocker and a passer, a passing blocker. So one that has to plant and have a good base and keep from getting thrown on the ground, but also be able to move around. So I tried to use physics as a tool to help them understand blocking better. Anyway, that's what got me to looking. And, you know, Jim, I haven't done this much, and I need to do this more. Highlight players. Jeff, do you know this guy? Keandre Marsh?
I didn't watch too many Ashbrook games last year, but sounds to me like I mean, you know, Ashbrook had a decent offensive line last year when I saw them play. You know, of course, you know, I watched them play against Forceview last year, a game that they probably should have won, but ended up blowing. And then I saw them against Kings Mountain, and of course, Kings Mountain is very tough to beat lately.
Yeah, they are, and Kings Mountain is solid on their lines, especially their defensive line. If you say they were decent, without this kid, they're not. They're not close to decent. So he may be watching. He told me he was going to watch the show tonight. If you are Keandre, you can type in any comments. You just need to remain humble as you get more and more people talking about you. Don't let it get to the head. Just remain humble. And as I mentioned to you, supportive of your teammates, supportive of the other linemen. Maybe the guy to your right or left needs help on a block. Gosh, this kid's so strong he could do it.
And you talked about a pancake block that he had.
He had 7 Friday night.
So had so many pancakes. He said the defense waffling. Huh?
Yeah, so yeah, that's funny, Jeff. I nicknamed him right now the Human Bulldozer. But I kind of wanted to nickname something along the lines of Mr. IHOP or something like that. So many pancakes, he had them waffling. That's, you know, you got it, Jeff. I'm gonna tell you, that's one thing you've got. You've got some wit about you. That's That's okay. It's a little strange, but I like that. So remain witty.
I'm my own person. That's all I can
Well,
say.
just remain witty, Jeff. You came up with that one just like that. I'll just kind of recap on that game. The Huff looks real good, and they played Mallard Creek this week, and I don't expect Huff to lose in the regular season. I'm not going to say they're not going to lose in the playoffs because the West is so brutal. But from what I've seen, I think Huff is a better team than Mallard Creek. Mallard Creek's a very good team, and there can be a tough opponent for them. But I do think that Huff should win that ball game. And of course, they got a fantastic kicker. The other thing about that kicker is I saw a kid kicking out there with him, and the chain crew told me, they said, yeah, that's a sophomore. So that kid was kicking field goals at halftime that were about, I don't know, 5 yards short of what Hoosier was kicking. And, he's supposed to be the number one kicker in the nation. So he's going to Clemson too, by the way. So Huff's kicking game will not drop when that kid moves on to Clemson. It looks like their kicking game is going to remain. West Charlotte, tough game. It seemed like in the second half, Huff made adjustments, and it was like they were in the coach's head about what they're going to call. They weren't confusing the coaches. I don't mean it in that way. I mean, they were in their head listening to what they were going to call on offense, because it seemed like almost every play they had an answer, and that was Huff. There were some times that West Charlotte moved the ball in the first half, but it just overall was really tough. And Huff found ways. On the back of this kid I just showed you, they ran the ball well. And so they scored 2 touchdowns, which I was questioning whether they would be able to score touchdowns, and that wasn't a question Friday night. So West Charlotte's still going to be a threat in 3A, and Huff may be a stronger threat in 4A. Okay, you guys say something.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, what's the word for it? It's everything seems to be a little bit more cyclical in a way. Like, how West Charlotte back from basically the 90s, they were dominant, and until 2007. And then recently there's been smaller cycles and stuff like that.
Right.
And I kind of wonder if we're going to see different rhythms when it comes to football programs like Independence. Independence for about 5 or 6 years were irrelevant. Mm-hmm. I was just kind of thinking about that while you were talking about, and we're going to see any more consistencies with one program being dominant. You have the Mallard Creeks who are dominant. If you look at the last 25 years, the team that's been the most consistent in Mecklenburg County has got to be Butler High School.
Right. Hi, Carrie.
Hey, Carrie.
That's exactly right. The most consistent program, certainly within CMS or within Mecklenburg County, excuse me. Well, Catholic is a very consistent program too.
Yeah.
But Butler is consistently good. In fact, their down year would have been 2004 when my son's team beat them for homecoming. Actually, was a wild game, but they still finished with a winning season. I think they were 7-4 or 8-3, probably 7-4, maybe somewhere in that range. I mean, it wasn't an outstanding year like they normally have, but Jim, since that school's opened, they have just remained consistently good. Schufer's teams were good. Newsom's teams were good and win state championships. And, now Hales is just carrying it on. And Hales is also the longest term coach in Mecklenburg County. Yeah.
Yeah. One question for you. When Butler was created, which high schools were impacted the most?
Which high schools were impacted the most? I would say Independence, East Mecklenburg, were probably impacted the most. Maybe, I don't think Providence, though Providence, but the way that they shift things, sometimes districts next to have to get impacted. But Independence and East Mecklenburg were probably impacted the most. West Charlotte stretches over a little bit, Garinger, but
I was just kind of looking at like the 10 traditional high schools in Mecklenburg County. These are the ones from 1966 until Providence was built in the late 80s. You got Garinger, very inconsistent. Harding, very inconsistent. Independence was very consistent for a long time, and then they kind of went into a little bit of a rut. Myers Park, you could make an argument Myers Park's been somewhat consistent over the last 25 years. A little bit cyclical, but maybe a little bit more consistent than others. Olympic's been inconsistent. West Charlotte's been inconsistent. West Meck has been inconsistent. North Meck, inconsistent. East Meck, inconsistent. South Meck, inconsistent. I mean,
I was just thinking, Jim, I'm sorry. So if we go back to Olympic, we know that they probably their best year was when Scott Braswell was coaching, and they beat Shelby and then lost to West Charlotte in the playoffs. But Braswell's teams were so prior to 90, they really only had one good year. I think in the 80s they might have won a handful of games at most over the whole decade. And the previous decade was probably 3 to 4 games. And in 70, of course, they went to the state championship. But when Braswell came, you had Scott Braswell. He took that program very quickly to be considered a power in Charlotte. Then Scott Stein was on his staff, and Scott Stein took over, and he also kept the program there. Then Pete Gilchrist took over. Now, Pete left Olympic and went to West Charlotte and carried West Charlotte through until 2006 when they went to the state championship. And then he was replaced at Olympic by Flowers. Now they had three losing seasons, but then from that point, they won. Then Flowers left. Schufer came on. They had that, very disruptive season that fell down, and then they went back up to being winning every season under Schufer, and then it was back to more cyclical. Although that's been cyclical. Independence over the whole course from the original 10, as you call them, which were there when I played. We were all in the Southwestern 4A. All the schools played each other. So you had 9 CMS games and 1 other game. Or at least that's
Wow.
what our schedule was. Maybe some other schools didn't. I don't know. But as I remember, we were all in the conference. Independence, I think for the most part, was good, but sometimes they were just good, mediocre in the middle through that range. And then they started picking up in the 90s, in the middle 90s, maybe early 90s, middle 90s. They started picking up. And of course, under Knott's, phenomenal. But the best program that you could mark for a couple of decades continuous winning is Butler throughout the whole history. We'd have to go back and look at Rudy Abrams.
He did a good job with West Charlotte, and I think he did pretty good at East Meck. He was a Garinger for a little bit.
Yeah,
he was among the best. But
so I would want to see his West Charlotte records. I don't remember, but yeah, Butler has to get the prize for being the most consistent program. Mallard Creek.
Back in the 60s, Garinger might have been the most consistent program. Back in the late 50s, early 60s, Garinger was a powerhouse.
Yeah, Garinger was so Garinger, they won state championship their first year open, 59. That 70 team that I mentioned about Olympic going to state championship, they beat Garinger in a tie game based on yardage. They were still they had a better record than Olympic did. They were considered a better team. So yeah, they were consistent.
Could you imagine if it was like good. If you had two different statisticians? One said that their team out yardage 228 to 225. The other one says no, we didn't. We won. It was 227 our side, 226 your side. I mean, that would have been a nightmare to keep up with that.
Exactly. I'm not sure because they had to determine it right away, and it wasn't like you could go to Huddle and get film and precisely calculate. In that time, it was
more of a gentleman's game.
8mm, and yeah, you had you actually had people that you had spotters, you had people writing down stats like Jeff does on the sideline. Jeff would have been at home in the 1970s, but they kept track of everything. So, and I don't remember what the yardage difference was, Jim.
It was 1970. I can probably find out real quick.
Yeah.
Let me go. Olympic. Let me go to newspapers.com.
Olympic had Randy Rhino, who had been at South Meck the year before and reshuffled.
It was it 1970 or 72?
1970. Randy Rhino was, in my opinion, might be the best running back we've had come through Charlotte. I know that'll get argument, but he was running in an era that teams ran and defenses defended the run. So it was a bit different. You had lower score ball games, and I don't know. He probably, I would assume, because that season he had right at 2,000 yards. So he probably had high 100s in yardage. So Olympic probably had somewhere around 200 yards, I would guess.
See what I'm going to do. I'm going to share my screen here. All right. I'll let you put it on there.
All right. I'm going to make the guess of 207 yards is going to be my guess.
And it was 237 to 151.
237 to 151. Okay, I was off.
Well, this is your wheelhouse, Dale.
Yeah, but
look at this last part right here. Yards penalized.
5. How about that? 1 penalty, 1 offsides.
And get this, the two teams, it was a 14-14 tie, only 5 punts. Look at the number of passes.
Yeah, you didn't throw the ball. You ran. It was a running game. 27 yards passing versus 43. Olympic really dominated that game. Look at that, 15 first downs to 7. Cook, I know Cook's son real well.
Well, look at this right here. Dunlap for Gehringer's 65-yard run. That was almost half of their
offense. Yeah. Wow.
I mean,
but
they play about 40%.
But they got that pass there at the
30-yard pass right here.
Yeah, I'd like to know what time that was in the ball game.
Let's see here. I can probably. Here's Randy Rhino right there, disappeared head first into the crowd.
The only 3-time All-American to play at Georgia Tech, a phenomenal athlete. His brother was good too. His brother also played at Georgia Tech. But anyway,
Rhino rushed for 126 yards.
Is that all he had? Okay.
And he never ran for more than 15 yards, but stopping the 170-pounder was nearly an impossible task.
So Bobby Cook, phenomenal player as well. Coach Joe White talked fondly of him. I had a meeting with Coach Joe White when we became active at Olympic, and I wanted to understand the Olympic history more because I really wasn't a big fan of Olympic, being a West Met guy. And sure enough, he had some great stories. I mean, Randy, he had so much fun things to say about Randy, who had played at South Meck the year before, the state's largest school. And because of back in that era with busing, we had you had school assignments change about every year or two. So he was shifted over and told, you're going to go to Olympic this year. He just buckled it up and went. He didn't complain about it.
Does that look like Randy Rhino to you?
Well, honestly, I just knew Randy Rhino by name. At 10 years old, he was every morning you would read. Every Saturday morning, we would read what you first brought up. So you could actually have box scores for all the games. And so you would always read something in the Charlotte Observer or in the Charlotte News, and Randy Rhino's name was, just constantly mentioned. So I didn't know. I've never met Randy.
Gotcha.
I did not see him. I don't remember seeing him play at Georgia Tech on TV, but I do remember watching his brother play. Watched a couple of Georgia Tech games that his brother had played in. Look at that, man. That's the center bar face mask.
It's crazy. Let me show everybody stuff here. Split Olympic.
Sorry, guys. We're old timers, so we kind of revel in this old stuff too, because I don't know. It's interesting, and I wish you people could see the way football was played then. It was just, you saw that 5 yards of penalties. You didn't see a lot of penalties. The teams were really disciplined, I think, across the board. It seemed like those aspects of the game were stressed so much more than they are today. They're stressed today, but they're not adhered to today by the players. That discipline, that level of discipline, is not the same. Now, I recognize the game has changed, and you can say the game's faster, but everything's relative. What the game was fast to those guys. Uh, yeah, players are fast today, but again, everything's relative. So as they looked at the guy across the line from them, he was faster than the guys they faced on JV.
Just out of fun here, I was looking at all these. This is back in October 10th of 1970. Look at all these teams that no longer exist, like Oak Ridge.
Oak Ridge, yeah, that's the first one I noticed. Oak Ridge and
Marion is now McDowell. Lenore's part of I guess it's more South Caldwell or West Caldwell. West Caldwell probably. A little bit of High Brighton. Morganton is now part of Freedom. Valdez is now part of Drawn or East Burke. Let's look down here a little bit. Regal is now Pender County. Sanford is Lee County. Rockingham is Richmond County. Greenwood is part of Lee County. Boone Trail is part of Western Hornets. Bellhaven is now part of Northside Pinetown.
And let's not forget some of the recent ones, such as East Montgomery and West Montgomery, Northern Vance and Southern Vance.
Now here's West Montgomery right here. See, Northern Vance and Southern Vance, they were created back in like 1989, 1990. Before the two schools, it was Vance County. And then they had opened up Northern Vance and Southern Vance. Northern Vance went to the traditional old Vance County High School, and then Southern Vance was the new school. And then, 4 or 5 years ago, they consolidated, and they moved the whole school to the Southern Vance.
Look what Shelby did to Chris.
41-7. See, Orem is part of, I think it's part of Pembroke, or not Pembroke, Purnell Sweat now. Pinecrest, I love how they spelled it in 2 words. It was 1 word. See, Anger, that's part of Harnett Central. Vaden Whitley is now, I think, East Wake. Just look, Gibsonville is Eastern Guilford. West Montgomery is Montgomery Central. Clarkton is that's part of West Bladen. Ellerby is part of Richmond County.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly.
Massey Hills, one of the Cumberland County schools. Reed Ross is one of the Cumberland County schools. Beaver Creek is part of Ashe County. Same thing with Ashe Central. Stoneville, I think they consolidated with Madison Maiden and become McMichael High School. That's a blast from the past, isn't it, Dale?
And before any of us were born, huh?
Yeah, I was conceived during this period of time, but I hadn't been born yet. Northwest Dance, that was part of Ashe County. Hudson, I believe, is part of South Caldwell.
It is. That's where South Caldwell is.
And Durham High was just pretty much disintegrated, so I went to different schools. I think it was mostly, I think they mostly went to Northern Durham. Rohannon, that's another one of those schools that's part of Richmond County. Siler City, it was already Jordan Matthews at the time, but a lot of times they call him Siler City. Hudson again.
I wonder why it became Jordan Matthews.
It's Jordan hyphen Matthews, and I don't know. So anyway, well, that's a little bit about a history story. I'll stop sharing. Hey, Dale, I think you're mute.
Oh, I am.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, they were past leather helmets then. And Jeff, I don't know when I went mute, but that was that was 10 years old when that came out. And I'm certain that the day that was printed, I read that list because every Saturday morning, was that the Observer or the News?
That was Charlotte News. That the
Okay.
news usually came in the afternoon, didn't it?
Afternoon. Yeah.
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 Because they stopped the. I used to buy the news when I was like a kid because they had it was a little bit more fun to be honest with you, and I think they consolidated with the Observer back around 84, 85.
That's right. Sometime in the early 80s, as I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got both the Observer and the News, and I was always digging through to see what was going on. I was a Harding fan then because everybody around me went to Harding and family, etc. I went to Harding games. I went to a few. I played at Westchester Optimus, which was right in the heart of Harding District, and uh, so yeah, it was a different era of football.
Now, in Mecklenburg County, what schools you consider to be the West Side boys?
The West Side. So every time it's funny you ask this because I remember talking about the West Side, and Rocky White said, Olympics on the West Side too. Uh,
It
the
almost doesn't feel right
the
though with Olympic for me.
the West Side, we would consider to be Harding, West Mecklenburg, and West Charlotte.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the three I have too. I
that's
can make an argument for Olympic, but it's a little bit of a stretch.
it is because they were out in the boondocks. They were down past the airport, and if you turned your lights on turned your lights off at night driving to Olympic, you wouldn't see a thing. You'd have to hope that the stars could light up. But it was in the middle of nowhere. Uh, Philip O'Berry, I guess, is a West Side school now because it's walking distance from Harding. Uh,
Is Barry between like Independence and Harding or
no, Barry. So if you know where Harding High School is,
a little
seriously,
bit?
okay. Uh,
Ashford Road is the only thing that separates those two
I
schools.
could, you could take a good punter, say Johnny Evans. Let's talk old school. Guy who played quarterback and punted. Johnny Evans, you could give Johnny Evans a football, and he could stand on the Harding field. How many punts would it take Johnny to get to? No more than 10 punts. Maybe, I don't know. Am
What's
I,
is there a school that's close to Independence? Is it a
um,
private school or something or
well, Rocky River is kind of close, but not real close.
Rocky River's in Mint Hill, isn't it? Kind of like
Yeah,
Independence.
they're east of,
Maybe
they're
that's what I'm
east,
thinking of.
they're more east of, they're the most eastern school. So yeah, anybody that's going to say West Side, Best Side, that kind of stuff, it's usually going to be Harding, West Meck, or West Charlotte.
How far is East Meck from? Where's East Meck located?
East Meck is
Monroe.
it is on the eastern side of Charlotte, and before Charlotte expanded, it was out on the very fringes. So if you were, I don't know how familiar you are with Independence Boulevard, but
Oh yeah, because 24, 27 kind of butts into Independence, or at least it used to.
it's
I
not
used to.
too it's not too far from the Coliseum. It's not
Okay,
it's not right at the Coliseum, but it's within a couple of miles of the Coliseum, I think,
I gotcha.
if I remember right. So it's just out. It's if in the old days it would have been where Charlotte ended, um, and you had a long stretch to get to Monroe. Uh, and when I say the old days, that's 70s, maybe up to the early 80s. Anybody hanging around Charlotte, that would have been the outer fringe of that part of Charlotte, and Independence was up above and out on the well.
So let's talk a little bit about violence these days of these games. I mean, is this an epidemic or pandemic we're going through? It's almost like somebody's got some type of virus and is passing everybody that crazy in the stands.
It seems to be happening now. Well, not just a lot more often, but it's happened the last few weeks now. So, and it's not just one place. I don't know, Jim. What's we're going to get to a point that something's going to have to be done. And in Charlotte, we've seen in the past when games were played on Saturdays because of this kind of garbage.
West Iredell and Statesville had to finish their game without fans just the other day because
exactly. There was a gun confiscated at that game. And that's
wasn't there a shoot?
They didn't have a shooting, as I recall, but I read about it Saturday, and I just read the part about them confiscating a gun, and it was agreed upon to play. They had agreed to finish the game Monday without fans, and that's a concern. When during the pandemic, we had the point of only being able to have so many fans come to games, etc. We might be pushing ourselves into that with this freaking fighting stuff.
Yeah, I think we almost have to put some type of safeguard in there. I don't know. I don't know what the safeguards is and the ethics and the logic about how to do it, but we got to have some type of safeguards applied.
Well, the first part of the ethics has to be doing everything to protect the children or the
Right.
students that are playing, the student athletes. And the most protective thing is to just have coaches, officials, and players in the stadium. Now, where do you take it from there? I don't know, Jim. I have ideas in my head, but I don't know how viable they are. I think we need chaperones.
Yeah, I think Union County schools, if you're below a certain age, you cannot go to the game without parents. So I think I read something like that. I don't know if it's in Union or Mecklenburg County, but I did hear about one county instituting that, or could have been just the certain schools that were involved in that.
So the Monroe Forest Hills situation could have sparked. I don't think I would start out with one parent, one child. I think I would say one adult to maybe 4 to 5.
Yeah.
So you could have one adult that keeps track of 4 to 5 underage kids. That would be my first level of chaperone.
When you say underage, you're talking about like anybody that's outside of high school, younger than us?
Exactly. So 18 and 17 and under, or outside of high school, under 18 or not in school. So if you were 18 in school, you would still have to be chaperoned. I know that might not sound fair, but I don't know. I'd have to come up with something to have adults there that would be willing to sit with those 5 kids. They can't let them run around.
Well, here's an idea for you guys. How about if you're like in Mecklenburg County, they have some type of system, and basically, if if you have shown the proper politeness, discipline, you do not have to be chaperoned in these games. We'll put you on some type of swap pass or some type of phone app, and you can get into the games that way unchaperoned. But if you do not meet that criteria, you got to bring in a chaperone and see what happens with that. See if it doesn't improve behavior in the classroom.
So that's a good point. So those students could be nominated by a teacher to be recognized as, I feel like they are responsible enough to have that. And then anybody else, there has to be some form of chaperoning. Most kids, when they go to the game, they socialize. And that's what they're doing. They're socializing.
Yeah, that's all I did when I was growing up.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're not
I
there
mean,
to
I watched the game a little bit, but we're talking about back in North Stanley when we won 6 games and lost 34. So
they're not there to have, to fight. But I think the environment that we have today in social media probably impacts this heavily, with bullying, etc. That people, even if it's not bullying, but people are, two kids are having a battle on social media, that can carry outside of the social media area. And I'm mentioning social media because a lot of times you can say something to somebody, or write something to someone, and you don't have the luxury of having voice, and so you can tell tone and other attributes about the person. If you see them, you've got more attributes that you can add to the way that they're saying things, that maybe in a face-to-face battle, it wouldn't be as bad as it escalates on social media. And then they see each other at a game, or one knows the other's going to be at a game. I mean, I'm not saying that's every situation. I'm just saying these kinds of situations are what's, I think, impacting this.
And then the parents get involved.
Say again?
Then the parents get involved, and then it escalates even further from there. I think, because I know there were like 5 adults, if I heard the story correctly, at the Monroe Forest Hills game that were part of the, what was it, 28?
Yeah. Exactly. It can start with students, but then adults. And the real question becomes, what's an adult? Science believes that, or medical believes that, we don't really mature until we get about 24, 25. Our brain is not completely matured. So as a 19, 20-year-old an adult, we call them an adult. I don't know what the ages were with the people, Jeff, but if they have kids that are there, so that would put them at least in their 30s.
Could it be started with something as simple as saying that kid sucks out there, or that kid cannot block, or that kid cannot throw, and all that? Then the parent says, "You better watch what you're saying to my kid," and then suddenly it escalates from there. Now, if you guys watched Inside Edition many years ago, one of the worst places where stuff like that happens is like at Little League baseball games.
By far, Pop Warner in Little League, without question. And basketball, AAU basketball is bad.
There was a guy named Bill McSwain. He was an algebra teacher at North Stanley,
Mm-hmm.
and he got in an argument with his son's little league baseball coach, and the coach got a firearm, shot him, and Bill died. This was like 2 years after I graduated high school, and I mean that, and the coach got off was acquitted, and I mean it's dangerous. I mean it's just
It is.
and we're losing our lives over first world problems of competition of all things.
Of first world problems,
Yeah,
exactly. Now, another issue which is resolved in CMS is that visitors cannot get to the home side, and the home side cannot get to the visitor side. That includes concession stands. There's no path around. You're fenced out from being able to intermingle, and that was implemented because of these kinds of issues. So they the show pros people are supposed to try to also regulate as best as they can. If they see someone, I saw this occur at the Huff game. Um, a West Charlotte person coming in through the Huff gate, and because they didn't know, they didn't understand the Huff layout, and they told them, stopped them right there and said, "You got to go around. You can't come through here." They were wearing West Charlotte gear. That's how they knew. Uh, but Jeff, if you're, I've been to Monroe. Uh, you could have Forest Hills people in the stands there with the Monroe people, and they could hear someone yelling at one of the kids, a Monroe. I'm not saying this happened. I'm just using this as an example. Don't anybody, but, or let's say Team Red yells out, a fan from Team Red yells out at a kid from Team Blue and says exactly what you said. You can't, he sucks or whatever. I try to keep my cool, but if I heard somebody trash talking my sons when they played, this is one reason I don't like the stands. This kind of stuff too. I'd have a hard time with that. I really would.
and I have problems with with home fans getting or away fans getting on their own players and
Me
screaming
too.
at one of the quarterbacks or whatever, knowing good well their mother or father is just like 4 rows down. They're just like egging the fight.
Jim, that reminds me, back in the early days of Carolina Varsity, um, I had a kid from Monroe, played football for Monroe. He was kicker. And he sent me a private message and asked me, should your own fans be yelling and talking bad to you? And I asked him, well, what are you talking about? And he said, well, this happens after the game. I'm really afraid to even walk out. And so he started explaining to me what was happening. Every time they would walk out, there were some fans that would stand there at the fence and would yell and trash talk to him. So I canceled the game I was going to go to that week. I told him, I looked and I saw, Monroe was, Morrisville was playing at home. And I told him, I said, I'm coming to your game. I'm going to see what's happening. And sure enough, and I confronted those men. I talked to the kid after the game out on the field. And then I said, I'm just going to stay away from you. I'm going to walk down to the fence and near the fence and see what happens. And sure enough, as he got close, they're yelling, yeah, we be better if we had a real kicker. You need to learn to kick, and saying some other things I don't want to repeat here. So I walked over to the guys and I said, hey, you guys are Morrisville fans, right? Yeah. So that kid plays for Morrisville. How can you talk to one of your players, or how can you talk to one of your team players like that? And B, how can you talk to a kid like that? They got real offensive. Well, you're not a Mooresville fan. We know who you are. Like, dude, it doesn't matter. You're talking to a kid this way. They backed up and walked away, and that kid told me they never did it again. But
Just they're acting like trash is what it comes
they're
down
acting
to.
like trash, and that's not the first time that's ever happened to someone, and it's not. It happens today. I hear
Well,
fans in the stands yell at kids all the time how they can't play. They're trash. They're
I had a funny story. I think I was a sophomore or junior in high school. I was working at John's Tavern over in Rowan County on a Friday night. And we were listening to the football game. It was North Stanley versus whatever. It was on WZKY in Albemarle. And they're like, there's a fight on the field. And it was two North Stanley players fighting with each other.
they're fighting each other.
And some of the players were like taking sides and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I think had nothing to do with opposition. They actually threw a 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty and had to break it up. And those kids were all sent off the field. And, I mean, it was just embarrassing.
Yeah,
it makes everybody that went to North Stanley, including me, look like trash. So.
Yeah, I don't really believe the kids understand how much they do represent their school and their community. They do. Now, maybe it's not as much as it was when you and I were younger, but you're still representing your school at least, and should be representing your family, your coaches, your teammates, not just your school, but I mean it's a close personal thing that your actions reflect upon the others as a whole. So if we could get that kind of message through to people, I don't know, Jim.
And what about this factor? I mean, we talk about suicide amongst teenagers growing and stuff like that. And you tear down people like that. I mean that that part can factor into it. I mean, I've heard stories, of people ending their own lives because of bullying and that. I mean, people need to take seriously the magnitude of their words and how powerful they can be and how they can either raise somebody up or destroy them. I mean, we need to start having more conversations like that.
So, Jeff, one thing I encourage, and I'm going to tell you a short story. But when my oldest son was a senior and my youngest son was a freshman, so they were on the team together. And one of our assistant coaches, he works with troubled youth, and troubled, not bad. Let me rephrase that. He, with some mental retarding condition. I hate to use that word, retarded. That's
mentally handicapped.
Mentally handicapped in some manner. Now, Scott was able to function, and we had him as a water boy. And I told my sons, this is something I've always preached, and I have conversations with kids. Anytime I get a chance to have a conversation with a kid, I have this conversation. So I told my sons, I said, that Scott is going to, when I first met Scott that evening, I told my sons, I said, Scott is the kind of kid or the kind of man. He was a young man, probably 22, 23 years old at the time. I said, he's the kind of person that people pick on. And I want y'all to make certain if anybody says anything. Now, David was a team captain, but I told David, I said, team captain part aside, if you have to, body slam your teammate if anybody starts picking on Scott,
Right.
and then they won't stop when you ask them to stop. So you cannot have bullying. Now their response to me was, "Why did you tell us that? Why, you didn't think we already knew this?" Which made me feel good that they had understood that we should always stand up against. Hey, yes, we sure can see your chat. I'm sorry. So the kid that we highlighted earlier, we played Keonde, right? We played your highlight at the start of the show. And I was telling Jim at the time about how dominant of a beast mode you turned on.
You didn't even have to tell me. I could just see the video. I'm like, yeah, yeah, that was pretty darn impressive. I mean, that's like D1 highlight film. So
yeah, how'd you like to play zero technique against him, or 1 or 2, or even 3 or 5? Be anywhere near him.
I was gonna say I wouldn't remember anything because I'd be a grease spot. So.
Be a zero technique right over him, and a player like that.
Player.
Yeah, a blocker like that could. Oh man. Anyway, Jeff, we'll move on. Fighting is an issue we need to address. Bullying is an issue we need to address within our society. We need people to stand up. Our wonderful center here, if you're listening still, you're in high school, you see anybody picking on someone, stop them. Yeah. Stop them. Stand up for every kid. People are born with situations they cannot control, and it causes them to be different. And they cannot control that difference. And they're still humans. And quite honestly, they may, in a lot of ways, they just have a harder time communicating it, be as intelligent. We got to stop this. You look different or you act different. I'm going to pick on you attitude. We need people. This is happening in our schools, and we need people to stand up and be friends to everybody. Be the person that is the friend to everybody. Actually go up and befriend someone. Go find someone that's being picked on and go be their friend. It'll mean a lot to them. It'll mean a lot to you as a human. Trust me. It'll make you a better human.
I was picked on a lot when I was much younger. School.
I'm sure you were, Jeff. And honestly, Jeff, one of the reasons I wanted to take you on, I talked with Coach Fox about you, were those kind of situations. And then you just, you won me over with all your jokes. But I do try to note people who have some differences about them, and that society might, not society, but mean, evil people might press against. So anyway, Keonde, you can be one of those people. Don't be just a great blocker on the field. Be a great blocker in the hallways.
Oh yeah, gosh, and the thing about it is when these coaches come up and ask the teachers or principals and say, well, you know what, yeah, he's great and everything, but I'm going to tell you right now, if any kid that feels like they're being picked on has a problem, they can come to Keonde or whoever. Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you right now, that makes a big difference because the coaches want to see leaders.
They want to see character too.
They want to see character, but That's leadership right there.
That's
When you
leadership.
stand up for somebody without anybody having to tell you anything, that's leadership.
That's leadership. That's also tells a coach that he will stand up for his teammates. He's going to back up his teammates. He's going to support his teammates. If he supports that kid that's got these issues and he didn't know the kid, what's he going to do with his brother that's on the field with him every night or every game? Let's talk about real quickly here, Jim. There's two teams that are not flying under the radar as far as notice. They are on record-setting courses. They're already at records. And the first one is East Gaston. And Jeff, I know you are very familiar with the Gaston County area and the Cleveland. And East Gaston's undefeated. They've never been undefeated at this point in the season. They got to play Burns, who is a very, very solid program and very solid football team. What is East Gaston's chances, you think? Now, I have picked Burns to win this game because it's the logical choice. But what do we really know about East Gaston until they're really tested? And this obviously is a test. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, none of the opponents that they have played thus far are anywhere near Burns's level, and it's going to be quite a task for East Gaston traveling all the way up to Lawndale to take on the Burns Bulldogs. And I was going to go out on a ledge and say that Burns would likely win that game by 21 points. But if East Gaston can basically keep it close at halftime and try and challenge Burns, that could be a different outcome. But their closest game thus far this year was against North Gaston, where that game was tied 7-7 at halftime, or maybe it was 14-7 or 15-7. And East Gaston ended up winning that game 29-15. That was like the closest game. But North Gaston, as improved as they are from these previous North Gaston teams, I don't consider that, the kind of challenge I would ready a team like East Gaston for a matchup like Burns. But, I got to give East Gaston credit. I mean, they've won all the games that were put on their table, and I cannot take that away from them. But, going into the doghouse, where it's pretty rare for a Gaston County team to win, that's going to be quite a tall task for the Warriors. So, I mean, I could eat crow. I mean, I'm already eating some crow served by the West Lincoln folks based on the preseason pick'ems. But what's another plate to be served my way?
I have East Gaston's schedule up. I don't know, Dale, if you're able to share.
Yeah.
So
let's see here. It'll be. I thought I closed mine. So what is this other? Is it that one? Nope. It's this one. What was that? There we
that's
go.
it. Let me make it a little bit bigger so everybody can see it.
The thing about this schedule, it's relatively similar to previous seasons' schedules. And I would say relatively comparable because they are in a lower classification now than, they're not in
they're in that, that 1A, 2A conference. And there's some differences here. Stuart Kramer is having a very tough season this year, and they're more down than normal. Ashbrook, I think you can pretty much say that they're probably down this year too. Thomas Jefferson is really struggling. Thomas Jefferson used to be a team that win 10 or 11 games, but things change, and
things change.
So the player or the teams might be the same, but the opponents, none of them really are having a very solid year. And I think you'd probably find 25 to 30 two-way schools that would be undefeated at this point.
Now, I did hear that Ashbrook, when they played East Gaston, Ashbrook had 4 turnovers in that game. I had a friend who was doing photography at that exact game, and she told me that Ashbrook's problem in that game was they were turning the ball over left and right, and would that score end up being 23-0?
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe if Ashbrook didn't turn the ball over, we probably could be talking about a different game.
Well, this is a tall mountain for East Gaston to climb without question. It's the biggest, obviously the biggest test they've had in a long time.
I'll take Burns by probably 17 to 20 points.
So I think we all agree. But as I always say, they have to play the game, and you really don't know what a team is. A team like this, you don't really know what they've got until they really get tested. So
and there's always there's 2 parts to the equation. East Gaston might play a really great game, and Burns might play a very subpar game, and that could always happen. And in a way, this game might be considered to be possibly I guess it could be considered a trap game for Shelby, although you have Cherryville, they say it.
Yeah, I hate to. And my thoughts are, there are no trap games for good teams. So I know what a trap game is, but good coaching staffs and good teams will not let anything be a trap. If they do, they aren't as good as as maybe we thought they would be. So I you got a big task ahead of you, East Gaston. The other game that's not as I don't think is as clear cut. It's still, I think, maybe a clear winner, but maybe not by as much, and that's Sun Valley and Weddington. Sun Valley's on their best season, undefeated. And here they are, having to travel over to Weddington, who's one of the best teams in the state. So that right there just makes this game, it's going to be a tough ball game. Tough to beat a Weddington team, period. Sun Valley, I don't know. It's hard to say with their season exactly where they're at. I think they will have to play their best ball game ever this year. Everybody's going to have to be at their maximum mentally and physically to be competitive in the game. Weddington's just too good.
I'll take Weddington by 20 points.
So, Jeff, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Jim on that one and, say Weddington. Now, I don't know who all Sun Valley has played and their level of competition, but, since given that they've struggled in the previous years and Weddington has been consistent, and at the end of the day, I believe consistency always wins, and that's why I'm going to go with Weddington. And I might go on the low side and just say Weddington by 14. But
let me throw this out because you got the schedule up there. You can see that they narrowly beat Myers Park. Myers Park narrowly lost to Huff. Now, one game is not relative to the other, but when you beat a team like Myers Park, you're not a So Sun Valley is, I think, just on their resume, is a top 20 team
I agree.
based on that resume. Uh, and I don't know how much we can draw from the Myers Park, common opponent with Huff to try to draw a line to what Sun Valley's got, because every game is about the matchup of that game. And the only way you can do a common opponent look at things is if you have all the data, which includes the rushing, the passing, the tackles, tackles for loss, all that stuff. Maybe how the line graded out, to be able to really say how they would compare. But I think the game has the potential to be a little closer than a 3-score game. But I did pick Weddington to win the game.
Well, with Sun Valley, I think they're probably something like a Mallard Creek right now on talents. Maybe Lake Norman High School. Those are the kind of teams that are kind of coming to mind right now.
Oh, okay. As far as where you would rank them.
Yeah, where I would rank them, right in that kind of that group, just outside of our Elite Eight. So.
Yeah, that's puts them somewhere inside the 15.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what's another plate of crow to eat while I'm out of town?
Well, crow's good if you put Frank's hot sauce on it. Dale knows this.
How about
Dale eats crow every week. I ate crow with that Huff game last week. I should have eaten crow.
How about Parmesan garlic and lemon pepper? Now those.
I guess that works too, but you need to have some hot kick to your.
So let's look at some games here. I'm just going to go down to see if anything kind of stands out. Ashbrook, South Point. South Point, I think, has got a losing record right now. Are they 3-4? Yeah.
Yep.
They're probably the best 3-4 team in the state. But yeah, they get up big on Crest and they lose, and I don't know. They have that tough time with Kings Mountain. They were in the game. I don't think you count them out in any game, but they certainly aren't playing. That's a big game right there.
Yeah, I'm going to take Butler by about 13.
I'm taking Butler too, but that's going to be a good game. I think Butler's just a better team overall.
I will be at the South Point Ashbrook game tomorrow night.
You will. Okay. I might come over. I didn't realize that game was – is that at South Point or is it at Ashbrook?
South Point.
South Point. Okay, so that's over here in Belmont. I might find my way over there, Jeff. I don't know. Depends on how my other stuff goes.
We've had some games get moved up to tomorrow night.
Yeah, we went over that early. So that makes me think that I wouldn't mind seeing South Point. That could be I don't know. I think South Point wins the game.
This is going to be a good game right here. Concord, Northwest Cabarrus. I'm going to take Northwest Cabarrus in this game.
I picked them in our pick'ems in the Charlotte Observer pick'ems. I thought about it. The first thing I thought about was, every time I think about Concord, I have to think back to the, 2000 decade and
E.C. Smith.
Them playing in state championship games, and how far removed they were, and maybe still are.
I'm looking at their schedule right now. They don't have a quality win. I mean, Piedmont.
Concord.
Yeah, Concord. Piedmont hasn't beaten anybody. Mount Pleasant's a two-way school, having a decent year. J.M. Robinson got smoked on 40-0. East Rowan, North Stanley beat East Rowan.
Yeah, just that's not a good win. Of
Central
course,
Cabarrus
it's a 1-point win too.
Exactly. Central Cabarrus is down. Jesse Carson's down.
Yeah. Yeah.
South Rowan is down. Northwest Cabarrus, though, is a different story.
Yeah, they're having a good year.
They're undefeated. They beat West Rowan here. They just haven't updated that. But, I mean, look at that. Shutout.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't think they'll shut out Concord, but I don't think Concord's going to do too well against Northwest. I'm going to say probably about 10 to 14 points.
I agree with you. Who's Kings Mountain playing?
Kings Mountain.
Stuart Kramer.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
7-0 versus 0-7. Next.
Yeah, no, not a game.
You know, this one right here, Northwoods Cummings, is going to be a good game. I might go to that one. That's going to be a decent one here. That will decide who wins that conference, I think.
Well, Friday night, I'm pretty much set on. I'm going to go over to Indian Trail and watch the two Indian Trail teams play each other. That would be Sun Valley and not two Indian Trail teams. I'm sorry, Sun Valley and Weddington play each other. I don't know why I keep thinking Porter Ridge. They're playing Porter Ridge, but
the west side of the county.
Yeah, let's see. Going down here.
Yep, it's closer to get to.
East Gaston Burns. That's a good game to go to.
Yeah, but it's an hour away, a little over an hour. Now, the good thing if I were to go to that game, and it is on my list, is that I have to go buy Red Bridges barbecue. So, could go have Red Bridges barbecue, and then I haven't been to Burns in a decade probably. So,
this here is going to be a good game. Person based in Eastern Alamance. That game could go either way.
Yeah,
Eastern Guilford, they're a good team. And I might go to this one here. I know they beat Atkins. They lost to Western Alamance earlier on in the season. Let's look at Southern Guilford. Southern Guilford hasn't won a game, so never mind.
Jeff, where are you going Friday night?
The coast.
Oh, okay. So you're going to go to South Point tomorrow night, and then you're not going to try to catch a game down at the coast?
I might see what games. I don't know if my Carolina Varsity pass would be any good from going.
No, the way South Carolina works is the best thing to do is to contact the school, get in contact with the AD, and tell them you're with Carolina Varsity, and to get them to put you on a list. And there's some games there. There's good schools between here and there. You're going to Myrtle, right?
Yes.
Green Sea Floyd's, isn't that over there?
What is it?
Green Sea Floyd's. That's where Donnie Kiefer, when he left North Carolina, that's where he played, won 2 state championships down there.
Well, I know there's North Myrtle, Myrtle Beach, Socastee, Conway, Loris, Waccamaw.
Waccamaw's in Pawleys Island.
Yeah, so if you start going south, you can go to Goose Creek, Berkeley.
That's way down south.
But it's only about an hour or so from Myrtle Beach, I think.
How about Lee County, Richmond?
Well,
let's look at Richmond. They've won 3 games, lost 5. This right here, I mean, I hate to say this, Lee County's probably favored to win this game.
I think they are.
I think it's going to be kind of a toss-up. Just for the heck of it, I'm going to be generous. I'm going to say Richmond County wins this game. But this game could really go either way. Lee County, earlier on the season, they lost to Union Pines, which is not a very good loss. But they lost to Pinecrest by only 10. So, I mean, it's going to be an interesting game.
Pinecrest has the former head coach of Crest.
And that's right. Former coach of West Montgomery also. So going down the list a little bit here, Millbrook Wakefield, that could be a decent game. Oh. Newburn Rose, that used to be a pretty good game.
It
Rose
used
is
to be
kind of down this year.
used to be a weekly or a yearly rival. And Newburn, of course, having to turn in the state championship, and they were fined $30-some thousand.
$38,000, and that's going to be evenly distributed between I think the 6 teams they beat.
I thought you were going to say
playoffs.
between the North Carolina legislature.
Well, that's just drinking money for them.
The question is,
That's a new kind of burn.
if you're Newburn, maybe you don't, because the NCHSAA's going away. Who's going to enforce it? Who's going to force them to pay? I think you could drag that out. They could take it to that appeals court, that appeals group that the legislatures want to put in place.
Is it that Gov thing? What's it called?
I'm not sure who it is.
You're talking about like the state police?
No. So
That's a different one. Okay.
There's just real quickly. You can have a situation where your AD, your coach, your AD, and your principal say, we're not appealing this situation. We can see this is a flagrant situation. You did this. The parent can say, okay, well, I'm going to go appeal it myself. And they can go and appeal it. That appeals process I'm talking about.
Gotcha.
That's where they get a lot. The NCHSAA gets a lot of their money is through those fines.
So I'm just kind of going. Let me go back up here a little bit. Olympic Myers Park. Myers Park should win that game.
Big. That'll be a big win for Myers Park. Didn't I just see
Pinecrest Scotland? That's going to be a good game.
Yeah, that's probably the best game in that conference, and that's for the conference championship. I bet you.
Yeah, it will be.
Yeah.
Games at Scotland. I mean, it's hard to win against Scotland at Scotland. This game is going to be a close one. I mean, I know that the Pinecrest kids don't. They look down at Scotland. The Scotland kids have a chip on their shoulder about Pinecrest.
Well, I kind of like both programs, but I don't know. I got this thing about Pinecrest getting somewhere sometimes. So
they have great facilities too. Both schools have great facilities. Both of them have great coaching too. Richard Bailey's great, and Nick Edens, one of the classiest guys I know.
Exactly. Now, there's another game that might be good. It's South Mecklenburg and Ardrey County. Because South Meck they're undefeated in conference. They started out the season not doing so well, and now, I mean, they're in the hunt for the conference championship. So
they beat Olympic, beat Berry Academy, and they beat Palisades. Wow.
Yeah, they beat Palisades pretty well too. Palisades just beat Olympic last week. So they got Ardrey Kell.
Do you feel like that's a new rivalry budding, Dale?
Which one?
Palisades and Olympic?
Yes.
Well, it should be. When Waddell opened, that became a real rivalry very quickly because of the splitting of the schools. And that's pretty much what has happened with Palisades opening, the splitting of the schools. So yeah, it should be. It should be called the Battle of the Creek.
The Battle of Lake Wiley.
Nah, the Battle of the Creek sounds better than the Battle of Lake Wiley. Battle of Lake Wiley is something to South Carolina schools.
See what Walkertown's doing. I would love to go up to Reidsville, but I'm not going to go to Reidsville to see them just destroy another team.
Right.
than they would against Walkertown. Wallace Rose Hill, Kinston. That could be a decent game. Wallace Rose Hill should win.
Let's go to Kinston and get some barbecue too.
That's some good food over there.
Yes, there is.
Oh, here's a good one here. West Columbus and East Bladen. West Columbus has got a good team here. They've lost one game. They lost to St. Paul's. West Columbus is a 1A school, by the way. And they've done pretty good this year. So keep an eye out for West Columbus. East Bladen is coming along. Let me put East Bladen in here. They've won. I know they beat East Columbus also. They've won 4 games in a row. They lost to James Keenan, 4A Ashley, and 3A North Brunswick. North Brunswick, you haven't really talked about them since the beginning of the season. They lost to Hoggard and lost to New Hanover. That's the reason why we don't really talk about them as much. Both good teams.
Who's Crest playing this week?
Crest is playing Forest View.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my alma mater. That ain't gonna be good.
No, that's not gonna be nice.
I like the game I'm going.
And who did we say Kings Mountain was playing?
Stuart.
Oh, they're playing Stuart Kramer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So no real good guys. Shelby, who's Shelby playing? Just wondering if there are any good games in Cleveland County. The Burns game. Burns East Gaston is going to be the best game in Cleveland County.
Shelby's playing Bessemer City,
so the East Gaston Burns game is going to be the best game in Cleveland County, and unfortunately has the potential of not being a great game.
I can't wait till that 2A, 1A conference is no more. I mean, it's not fair to Shelby, Burns, and East Gaston, and it's not fair to the 1A teams. I mean,
right.
I didn't like it when they did it.
So I'll tell you what. Let's look at the Elite 8 rankings. Let's see if I can make this thing any bigger. Not that big. All right. So 1A East, you got Tarboro, and then the next 7 just fill in the blank.
I agree. Yeah, exactly.
So,
I still believe this is Tarboro's championship to lose, though Mount Airy and Robinsonville will they'll make noise about it. Actually, there's a number. There's more competition in the West than there is in the East.
I agree,
but not championship.
To me, there's 2 buckets. There's Tarboro and then everybody else. And
right.
so the 1A West is a little bit different. I think you have. I think Mount Airy is a moderate favor over Robbinsville.
I agree.
And Eastern Randolph's and Drawn and Swain are just kind of right, just a little bit under that. And then the next bucket is Mountain Heritage, Murphy, and Mitchell. And you got other teams. You can throw in Starmount, North Rowan, Thomasville. There's a lot of decent teams. Mountain Island Charter, that could come out. But the 1A West is deep.
Certainly compared to
the 1A least.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that would kind of be an advantage for the 1A West, you think, because that means they're more battle tested.
Yeah, but it also that's one way to look at it, Jeff. But the other way to look at it is they are more battle tested, which means they're more beat up. Their games, the tougher a game is, obviously, the more chances you can get dinged playing the least of teams. But if you're in battles, then there's a lot of physical stuff going on. And that can wear and tear on a team, if you're having to go through this gauntlet of teams, the two things about that, one, the physical aspect of it, but the other is because of that physical aspect and the teams being so close, who you might think is the overall best team could fall one night. They're just not quite at that game. They're not quite where they need to be, and the other teams are close enough in striking capability to be able to take them out. So,
Do you think depth is also a factor when you talk about 1A ball?
Yes, a little bit.
1A balls where you got quarterbacks playing free safety.
Yeah.
The quarterback may kick, he may play free safety, and you got linemen going both ways, and you don't have that.
I think it was 2018 when Pamlico went to the state championship against Murphy in the small 1A, and I think Pamlico had like 24 kids on their whole roster.
Seems right. 30 to I would think somewhere between 25 to 30 kids is what you'd expect to see on 1A teams.
And with the teams that are they're really, really strong powerhouse, like Tarboro going to have close to 50 kids on varsity, and you're going to have like Mount Airy's going to have, and Robbinsville are going to have 35 to 40 kids.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of these teams are lucky to have more than about 22, 23 kids.
Yeah, most of them do not. The traditional teams, who you just named traditional,
Right.
They're there every year. Because of that draws kids to want to play. So, yeah, they have more to choose from. Tarboro being in the mix every year.
Two Fridays ago, I was over at Page over in Greensboro, and Page is a traditional powerhouse. And I was counting jerseys on their sideline, and I think they had either 33 or 35 players suited up for that game. And that's a very small amount for a 4A powerhouse.
Right. No, it's a very, very small, because you usually look to want to put about 50 kids if you can. Coaches don't want to have more than 50 on the sideline. But the good teams you'll see put, in 4A, you'll see put 50 kids out. Now, the numbers are smaller now, Jim. That's what I'm noticing. I haven't counted West Charlotte's numbers, but I noticed that Friday night. Again, it seemed like they had less this Friday night than they had before, but it may just be the venue made them look smaller. But not everybody's able to put, field these 40 and 50 man teams now.
And you can tell the teams that have good weightlifting programs and those who don't.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just it's amazing. So let's look at 2A East. Clinton, to me, is a significant favorite to win the 2A East. They're not as strong as Tarboro is in the 1A East, but Clinton just keeps on rolling. East Duplin is undefeated, and I think they're a solid number 2. Mm-hmm. Then you got, I'm going to say 3-3-5, Walsrose Hill, Northeastern, Hertford County. Throw them in a bag and pick them out. I do think Northeastern beat Hertford County, if I remember right. Let me go back over here. I think Northeastern beat Hertford earlier on this season. Yeah, they beat them 43-42. Okay, so that's not much difference between Northeastern and Hertford,
Right.
After that, West Craven, Nash Central, Southwest Edgecombe. There's other teams like Green Central, several others that you could probably throw in there. But right now, to me, one of the top 5 teams will probably win the 2A East. And I say Clinton.
I say Clinton.
Probably a 40 to 50% chance of winning it all in the East.
I agree.
So
maybe even I might even say a little higher, but
you might be right on that. Now the West is a different story, and right now, I think Monroe. I think Monroe's. I would rather be Monroe than anybody else. I won't give them a percentage chance of winning the 2A West because anything can happen. But I think Monroe has the best shot of all of these schools. Reedsville, they keep on winning. They stumbled against a pretty good 3A Eastern Alamance team earlier on the season, but they're good. Salisbury, they keep on winning. They got a really good defense. Their running back is their offense, and they have one really good receiver, but you got to get the ball to the receiver consistently. And I think their Salisbury's passing game, at least when I saw it just didn't strike any fear in me. Bunker Hill, Burns, Shelby, I think you could probably throw those three in, and even Forest Hills, you could probably put those four teams all together. I'm putting Randleman at number 8. I think Randleman has something that's kind of that sleeper team. Randleman was good for I'm going to say for about 7 or 8 years under Shane Handy. He left. They started struggling. And then this last year, I believe they're undefeated. Let me go to see if I got Randleman on here. I think they're 7-0.
Well, my nickels and pennies are on Monroe.
So, I mean,
that's a very good team. I'm gonna tell you, Monroe is.
Monroe and Reedsville play each other. I think that will be a knockdown drag.
Monroe is something else.
So, the one thing also though, I would not dismiss Shelby. I mean, they lost 3 games, but I mean, there's not many 2A teams that would beat any of those teams. So
agreed. I hear.
So I think Shelby is. I could see Shelby popping a Monroe on one given cold Friday night in November. It could happen. But this is going to be a fun one. I think this is a very deep group. And you also got teams like East Gaston. I don't have them in here. I don't have West Lincoln. I did have West Lincoln at number 8. And then I did some, looked between Randleman and West Lincoln. I'm like, I'm going to go with Randleman this week. I think Randleman might just be a hair better. So going to the 3A East, right now I'm going to say there's it's kind of a three backfield right here between 71st Scotland and Northern Nash. I think these 3 are kind of co-equal. 71st has maybe come down a little bit. Scotland's pretty steady, and Northern Nash, I mean, they just beat a very good 2A Nash Central team. So I'm going to say those 3 are there. And then you got Havelock, who just came off a very good win this last week. Let me see who Havelock beat, because I can't remember off the top of my head. Let's see.
Jeff, were you trying to say something?
Yeah, I mean, when I talked about Northern Nash beating Nash Central, isn't that kind of like a rivalry game too?
It is. That's those are 2 teams in Rocky Mount. So, although I think you could say that
good barbecue in Rocky Mount.
Yeah, I can't remember. Northern Nash might be a little bit more of Nashville than Rocky Mount, but
they're
how about
kind of northwest of Rocky Mount.
Yeah, northwest of Rocky Mount.
Yeah.
So they beat Jacksonville. Jacksonville's a good 3A team. So let's go. I got Jacksonville at number 8 here.
I like your first 2, but I do like 71st a little more. If Scotland beats Pinecrest, then I might even actually would push for Scotland to move up to number 1.
If Scotland beats Pinecrest,
that'd be a big win.
Yeah, it'd be a huge win. But the 3A East is pretty deep. The 2A East, the 1A East, not deep, but 3A
Right.
East is got
Much
some pretty
better.
good teams after that. You got, I mean,
Yeah.
still have Western Alamance, you got Eastern Alamance, you got Williams, several others. North Brunswick are not in there. So let's go to the 3A West, and this is a slobber knocker of a group here.
It is. Yeah.
Dudley Crest, I mean, it's Kings Mountain, West Charlotte. I mean, I think these four teams, each one of them, if they get hot at the right time, they can win.
Yeah. Crest has a phenomenal offense, but they've got a defense that's giving up a lot too. So
Then you got Kings Mountain's offense that gets sluggish at times, but that defense.
Exactly. I mean, there's this top four here.
I'll be at that game too. You can bet your bottom dollar on it, and you'll come out richer.
Kings Mountain and Crest.
Yes.
Yeah. The Dudley's a solid. That's a solid. They're solid. I had thought Crest as number one, early in the season and for a long time, but I'm gonna say though, I still think, and maybe they have to be a dark horse looking at this. West Charlotte's I think they're the team to beat.
And then you got J.M. Robinson.
Yeah, we can't count them out. Yeah, they're having a good season.
Hickory undefeated, West Henderson undefeated, J.M. Robinson's undefeated.
Exactly.
And then you got AC Reynolds, who
look who they've lost to.
Yeah, I mean they lost to I know they beat Shelby, but let's go back to AC Reynolds. I think they lost
to Raven Gap too, right? Is that right?
I think AC Reynolds lost to. Let's see here. Let me go Forsyth here. So we pull.
Yeah.
I think they lost to East Forsyth and West Forsyth, maybe. Yeah, let's let me go. Here's AC Reynolds.
Yeah, so find them Heritage.
They lost to West Forsyth by a point. Lost to Watauga by a point.
Mm-hmm.
And lost to East Forsyth by 6. Those are 4A schools right there. Beat Shelby by a touchdown. And beat the snot out of North Buncombe.
Well, slapped Inca around.
Yeah, Inca smelled that place up even worse than it is.
Poor Inca.
So
yeah, the West is tough. The top half of the West is really tough. The edge of the top half is really tough. And that's speaking of 5 and 6.
Right.
And
I mean, this is
on any given day, AC Reynolds can slip up and win a game there. So that's the problem with playing a playoff like this is, or with this kind of competition. Most nights you're going to have to be on your game. It's not going to be a cakewalk to the regionals.
So the 4A East, you got Rollsville at 1, Cleveland 2, Hoggard 3, and Pinecrest 4. I do think Rollsville and Cleveland are pretty darn even.
Keep sleeping on Hickory. Sorry, Jim, but Bob just said keep sleeping on Hickory. Hickory's.
I mean, they're slowly. 6. I mean,
they've been slowly creeping up there, man. They're on the edge of that top half. We'll see. I mean, that's the great thing is they get to play the games and prove it.
And Coach Glass loves it when we underestimate them.
Oh, sure.
Let's see what happens here. Let's pick on the Hickory guys here. Let's see. West Iredell.
Want to give Hickory some bulletin board material?
Let's see here.
Dang,
Well,
I don't see
I
anything
think
to
I
give
could.
bulletin board material on.
Yeah, I was gonna say these West Iredell and Fred T. Ford. Yeah, there's nothing I can do to help you out there, bud. Statesville, I don't think I can help you out on that. I mean,
Statesville's
decent this year.
Statesville's decent, but can Statesville play with Hickory? I would say no.
Yeah, I think Hickory goes undefeated for the regular
Sorry,
season.
Statesville. You shouldn't have let me down losing to Lake Norman. It was the first game of the season. You let me down, guys.
So yeah, like the 4A East though, Rolesville, Cleveland to me is like 1A, 1B. Hoggard's kind of 3A, and Pinecrest is 3B. And then I think there's a little bit of separation for these next four. Wake Forest is kind of laying low, right below the radar, and I like Wake Forest. That's a game. They're at Heritage this week. Let's look at Wake Forest really quick. I know they lost to Clayton. And Clayton, look at that. They're ranked number 6. Wake Forest is number 7.
So Clayton, by the way, coached by Scott Chadwick. Scott was at Myers Park. He was at Marvin Ridge. Out of Virginia. Great coach. I think hopefully most of you people know him. Now he's turning things around at Clayton. There's a good article in the Charlotte Observer about that.
I didn't know Scott was over at
Yeah, he is. He left Myers Park, went to Maryland as a recruiting coordinator or something like that, the University of Maryland, and then he came back.
So he's at Clayton then.
He's at Clayton, exactly. So you can expect Clayton will just get better. I'm not just talking about this year. I'm talking about over the next few years. They will just progressively get better and better and better. He's done it everywhere he's gone.
I might go. I think I might wait till they play Cleveland.
So
Clayton, Cleveland. That's going to be a slobber knocker right there.
Aren't those two big rivals?
They are. They're both in the same area, same part of the county.
A bit of a game for Clayton. They certainly will not be favored in that game, but it won't be too far off.
Well, the good thing is that Clayton. Cleveland
right.
will be visiting them, so
I would think Cleveland's a 1-score favorite, and I don't know if home field's worth 3 points. It still keeps it within 1 score. It's still a 1 score, and I'm thinking 1 score as in really a touchdown. But
yeah, I mean, gosh, in the month of September and October, they've given up exactly 1 touchdown, 7 points.
Exactly. You'd probably look at that and would find it's a fourth quarter, one of those kinds of deals.
Right. That Gardner game with Cleveland, that's going to be a good game too. So let's go to, and then I'll have Leesville Raid. I think Leesville Raid is kind of the best of the rest on that.
Right.
But 4A West.
Well, let me just say, I like Rolesville out of the West right now. I mean, out of the East, excuse me.
Yeah. Now, 4A West, I still think Grimsley is the best team in there. I just think they keep on doing everything they need to do. I think last year's coming runner-up in the state championship, they might have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I believe they won it the year before. After what happened with New Bern, New Bern having to vacate the title, it does not go to Grimsley. I've had people say that Grimsley is
No, it's
now the
just
new state
vacated.
championship. I'm like, no, that's not how it works.
It's just there is no state champion.
Yeah, exactly.
That's unfortunately the way it works, people.
But
Vacated.
Well, you can't do that because the other teams that they beat could say, well, we could have made it to the state championship and we would have won. So you can't. That's why you can't just automatically hand it over to the other team because New Bern beat all those other teams to get there. So who's to say one of those teams wouldn't have stepped up and won?
I mean,
why you vacate?
see,
Why you play the game?
New Bern barely beat Jordan last year. That was actually Jordan was leading that game for a good portion, and I think New Bern pulled it out by a score. But 4A West, Grimsley won. Butler Weddington, I think you could probably put a slice of paper in there, and there's not that much difference between those two.
That proved out on the field. So it was a slice of paper difference between them, with Butler having the upper hand.
And then I think Cuff is just right, just a little bit under there, and Chambers maybe just a teeny bit under that. Mooresville, Independence, Watauga. I think to be honest with you, I think Independence has the higher ceiling of all this, and Independence might have. I still think Independence might come out into the top 3 or 4 before it's all said and done. But
I'm just not sure about Watauga.
Yeah, I'm not. I just think they're going to struggle with the speed of some of these Charlotte teams.
Well, no question, but I would think even a team like Mallard Creek is better than Watauga. Maybe your East Forsyth. Heck, I don't know. There's a number of teams that
their schedule really doesn't do them a lot of justice. As far as
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. And
I actually was thinking about Sun Valley as a potential.
Sun Valley is a potential.
And then was it? Let me go up here. I don't know if Lake Norman's playing. I'm gonna select Mooresville, then go to Lake Norman here.
But you know what? I give Watauga credit for having a great stadium. It's a great place to go watch a football game, except late in the playoffs.
Lake Norman, Sun Valley, Watauga.
So Lake Norman and Mooresville are going to carry in, I believe, undefeated for their game. I think Lake Norman's probably close to on par with Mooresville.
I agree.
And I recognize Watauga's undefeated, but maybe I'm wrong.
They can score some points, but the thing about it is with Watauga, once you get them off the mountain, they tend to be a little bit more. They have kryptonite around them a little bit more, if you know what I mean.
Well, it's tough. It's tough to play these Piedmont teams with the speed that exists down here.
Charlotte and the Triad teams. I mean, those teams are notorious for speed.
Exactly. So
East Forsyth is.
That's usually what gets them.
East Forsyth's kind of in that group there. Davie County. Davie County's. I mean, heck, they lost to Mooresville, and they beaten Mount Tabor.
I think Davie's a decent team.
And then they lost to Mount Tabor by a point last week. Mount Tabor, I think, is 3-4.
Yeah, but that's a bit of a rival game itself.
That's a tough conference right here, too.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, these teams are just beating the crap out of each other. Lost to R.J. Reynolds. R.J. Reynolds has won 2 games. I mean, it's just That's a tough conference right there.
Gary
On any
made the comment that they could possibly play last game of the regular season being undefeated. I agree with that. I think it's going to be undefeated, two undefeated teams going at each other.
Tell you what, let's do. I'm gonna go here to.
that game interest you, Dale?
Which one? Lake Norman, Morrisville?
Yes.
Does it interest me? Yeah,
Yeah.
if I could split my body, it would be a game I would consider going to. But there's some other games that night I'm considering. One of them being Crest Kings Mountain.
See, Mallard Creek, they had number 8s in the whole thing there, so they're higher on Mallard Creek than I am. Let's go
Well,
down a
that's
little
just
bit.
numbers.
Well, look at this: Sun Valley, West Forsyth, East Forsyth, Watauga. All 4 of those schools we just talked about. Then Lake Norman,
Yep.
Myers Park.
Myers Park. That's right. I shouldn't count out Myers Park being better than Watauga.
And then Charlotte Catholic is probably right there. So I mean, all these teams are just kind of.
Would even a Millbrook maybe be a better team? I don't know. I think they've got some weapons that Watauga might have some problems with.
Millbrook, I saw them play against Gardner, and they should have beaten Gardner by probably 20 points or so. And you see right here they lost. It was, I think, the score was 33-28. I think at halftime it was something like 28-10. And
so, Jim, this is another game that's on my radar. I just flashed it up on the screen.
Right.
Gary says.
But
go ahead.
Butler and Independence.
Yeah, Jeff. Butler Independence.
That's what he brought up.
Yep. That's I went to so many of those games back in the 2000s. And when I say the 2000s, I mean from 2000 to 2009, and especially I think it was 2005 or 6. I don't remember which one now, but there was about 20,000 people in Memorial Stadium for that game.
I went to a game with you back in 2006 at Memorial Stadium, which was Butler and Independence, and I think that was for the 4th round of the playoff game, because I remember going to Catholic Northwest Cabarrus a day early, and then I went to that game with you guys. I mean, I was trying to pick between those two, ended up going to both.
Yep. That's right. I forgot. Now, I think the big game was the regular season game. When I say the big game, because I went to both games. I went to the regular season game and I went to the playoff game. And the regular season game, I think, is, if I remember correctly, is the one that had around 20,000 people. Coach Newsom was on our Spaces Friday night, and he brought that game up. It was just a phenomenal game. That was the game also that Butler jumped up 14-0 or 21-0 on Independence. Independence won there towards the end of the ball game, but what a ball game that was. I think the game, Jeff, that you and I went to, while not as close, it had a decent crowd, as I remember. What do you remember about that crowd?
Well, I remember that stadium was pretty lit. I mean, it was hopping, and I can't remember where I was positioned exactly. If I was on the sidelines with you guys or if I was in the stands, but I remember it was high. It was I don't know how many fans were there, but it was almost full. And my friend was with me, and he was sick as a dog that night.
Okay, so maybe that was the one that had the 20,000 plus. One of the games that year had the 20. We estimated around 21,000, and the other game that season was probably around 12, 10 to 12, something like that. Usually, independents would pick up attendees to games as the playoffs got deeper and deeper. And of course, people's teams stopped playing, and they needed a game to go to. The rivalry there is phenomenal, and I expect it's going to be a good one this week. Coach McFadden's got Independence back on track. Butler is on cue. Butler will win against Catholic. I think, honestly, I just got a feeling it's going to be a 2-score game. I might be wrong. Catholic, you want a place to see a ball game. Jim, have you been to Catholic?
I haven't been to Catholic since I was in high school.
Oh, man. Well, when you were in high school, they might have been playing over on Park Road.
Yeah, I think they were. It was back in the late 80s. Cafford, I don't think when was Cafford?
I don't remember when that stadium opened, but they used to be over on Park Road. You could have an errant punt that would go over that high fence and into Park Road.
Well, the place that they played, North Stanley used to play Catholic, was very muddy. It would get really wet. It didn't irrigate very well. Yeah, basically at halftime you almost have to hose your kids off.
That sounds like Monroe. When I played at Monroe last game of my career.
Now Parkwood was an awful place to be. That was just, I mean, they didn't have any talent. Their biggest weapon was their football field.
That sounds like Concord.
Oh gosh, Concord. Yeah, I mean, you remember how wet it was? I mean, I was scared that you're going to get leeches in that.
That bottom right corner end zone area, and then the field on the home side. So if you're facing the field, to your right, down in that corner, man, that thing was always underwater.
I'd never seen green mud before until I realized that you could paint that. And oh my gosh.
I used to make it a tradition. Well, at one point I was starting to make it a tradition that once all the county teams were eliminated, go to Charlotte Catholic.
Yeah, I remember when you were doing that. Yeah. It's the best place I've watched a football game. If you want to be energized, it's the best place.
A.L. Brown has a lot of potential, but I don't think I think their fans have changed a lot over the years. I think they're not nearly as into the games as they used to be. Mm-hmm. Same thing with Concord fans. I think they were actually more into the games 10 years ago than A.L. Brown fans were.
Right.
But,
I believe that. Yep.
I'll tell you one of the best rivalries. You want to go down the eastern part of the state, James Keenan and Wallace Rose Hill. Mm-hmm. Those fans, back then they were 1A schools, and they would you'd have a game, 3,500 people show up, and I want to tell you right now is the best behaved group of fans you'll ever see because they are focused on that game. So,
Richmond and Scotland, you want a good rival game,
right?
A good atmosphere.
Tuscola, Fisco.
I prefer that game at Richmond too. By the way, I don't know why, but it just feels more, especially now with their new lights, where they can turn the lights on. Oh, they are something else. This will be a year I don't think I'll go to a Catholic game. It looks like, unless I went this Friday night. Do what now?
Page Grimsley is another good rivalry game. I
might go Friday night. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to figure where I'm going to go Friday night. Maybe that's another place.
Last year I watched probably half my games in Alamance County and Durham. haven't been to a game in either Alamance or Durham this year. I've been a lot of Wake counties. Been to Guilford. I've been to Person. I'm trying to remember where else I've been. Orange County. Been to a few games here, but I'm trying to figure out where I'm gonna go this next week.
I feel pretty confident I want to see Sun Valley. A small part of me wouldn't mind seeing East Gaston, but I think I'll have a better game with Sun Valley and Weddington than East Gaston and Burns. But I'm not to say I'm going to have a tight game there. I don't expect that. And Butler Weddington would be a good game, but I don't expect it to be a tight game. But it'll be a good game. It'll be a good atmosphere. Jim, you need to go to a Catholic game sometime. The atmosphere is just,
electric.
Yeah, you can't describe it. It is electric. It really
I'll have to
is.
get Lee Edwardson, get him to come up to one of those.
Yeah, you need to pick a good game too. One that they turn out, but they turn out.
I imagine Lee would just Lee's the type of guy he knows how to go all the way to the edge without crossing it when it comes to saying something to get kicked out of the game.
Yeah, I don't know. I've stood with him at a couple of games, and Lee is he's not the way he is on forums. No.
I've talked to him several times, numerous times over the years, and he's just a fun guy. He just likes to have fun.
He likes to have fun, but he's also a respectable individual. So in person, he's highly respectable.
Oh yeah.
On a forum, he'll tear you to pieces.
Talking about foot soldier?
Yep.
No foot soldier.
He's a keyboard warrior. He
was picking on me about North Stanley one time. I said, "Oh, you're that little scrawny guy that used to come to our bus, make sure we had the tires checked and everything gassed up, so we could come up to North Stanley. You can kick our butts." He appreciated it. He saw the humor in that. So
him and I think the guy's name was Big Red or something like that. He was a Red Raider.
Well, 87 Raider.
87 Raider. That's him. That's him.
Rodney.
Yeah.
Rodney.
Yeah.
He's a character too, man.
Yeah.
He and Lee are good friends. I think.
Yeah, they are. At least that's what Lee has told me.
How's Lee doing?
He's retired.
he had some health issues, but it seemed like he had like 2 or 3 falls. Yeah, and I know one time he broke, I think, was it break a ankle or something, or
something in his lower leg.
Yeah. But
I don't know. He tells me we got to get together and have wings sometimes, and that's correct. We do. We do need to get together and have wings.
Wing King still good?
Wing King is still the best wings you're going to get in North Carolina, South Carolina. Yeah, it's still good.
I'm trying to remember last time I've been to Charlotte.
Do what? What was it?
I got one. Who do you want, Jim or me?
No, go ahead. I was wondering what Jim was saying, but you can go ahead and finish.
Well, Kickback Jacks up in the Mooresville and Hickory area. Those grilled wings, man, they are to freaking die for, man.
I like fried wings.
Get me all hungry here.
What did you say, Jim?
I was trying to remember last time I was down in Charlotte. It's probably, I know it was. I haven't been to Charlotte since the COVID pandemic.
Oh, really?
It might have been the time we went to. I went to the Jamboree down in 2017.
Oh yeah. That's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I just tend to be a triangle eastern part of the guy. I've been kind of going towards the triad a little bit this year. So,
well, on one of my trips up to Durham, we're going to go to Hillsboro Barbecue. Without question, unless you got something better.
Oh no, you can't get better than that.
That's good stuff. So I didn't leave Durham last week until 7:00.
Gotcha.
So I know you had your school board thing, or your not school board, but your city council meeting. So
Yeah.
Well, fellas, I hate to leave y'all on this note, but gotta get ready to run.
Yeah, I kind of
Hear
prepared to
ya.
do the same thing, but
You
well, I
getting
tell you
ready
what, let's
to
just go. Let's go ahead
run
and
to
wrap
the
up.
beach?
What do you think?
Yeah, you getting ready to run to the beach, Jeff?
I gotta do a lot of packing right quick.
All right.
All right. Well, Jeff, if things work out, I may see you in Belmont.
Okie dokie.
Okay.
Jim?
All right, Jeff. Always good to see you. Dale, great catching
Yeah.
up with you. And from Jim West, Dale Ross, and Jeff Miller, thank you so much for joining in. Take care.
I thought,
Thank you.
Jeff, you were saying Jim, as in Jim's going to